All right, Nick, let's talk about the Houston Texans. As the draft has passed us, undrafted free agency has pretty much been selected. We're starting to go through teams and see young players, these rookies who've come in. And is there anyone that stands out in the coaching sphere? Is there anyone that people are talking about that they're going to make an impact on this team? Is there someone special that the Houston Texans have selected that we think is going to be a great player? And there's one guy in particular. His name keeps popping up. He's a fan favorite. Coaches seem to love him. A lot of analysts love him as well. And I think this is going to be a big one for the Texans. We'll get into that in just a second. But first, I'm Andrew. That's Nick. And this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, one guy in particular, name keeps popping up. Everyone is talking about him, and it's a lot of good stuff as well. Let's jump into the article and we talk more about it on the other side. Of course, we're talking about running back Woody Marks from Southern Cal coming over to the Texans and how much he is able to bring this team and what people are thinking about him first. First article from SI.com talking about some ESPN analysts and what they think he can bring to the table. Then we'll get some coaches and other people as well. It says, in the eyes of ESPN analyst Mike Clay, Woody Marks could be in line for a really productive first year in the mix. He said Marks was a pass-catching star in college, posting 1,500 receiving yards and 317 targets over 5 seasons, more than doubling the next closest back in routes, targets, and catches. Very interesting. Clay wrote, on the other hand, he averaged south of 5 yards per carry over 5 seasons in a career 2.4 yards after contact per carry is easily the worst in the class. So there's a little bit of dichotomy there. He says Marks also underwhelmed across the board at the combine with a 4.54 yard 40, but the 24-year-old will be competing with Darren Ugumbawale, I probably butchered that, I apologize, and Damian Pierce for number 2 duties behind Joe Mixon in Houston. So I think what Marks brings to the table is something that really accentuates, highlights what the Texans already have. What they have is a guy that can be that fast, that quick running back that hits the hole and does a lot of good things. But what he brings to the table is something different. And let's talk about what head coach D'Amico Ryans has already said about Marks. He says, I know him and Woody, talking about running back coach Danny Barrett and Woody Marks, have already had a great connection, said head coach D'Amico Ryans about Danny Barrett. You see it. They work really well together, and I'm excited to see Woody just get in with the other guys. So already after rookie minicamp, D'Amico Ryans talking about how Marks has worked with the running backs coach. They've really started to bond. There's a great connection there, and he's really getting excited for him to join this running back room, a group approach here. Then finally, I have a little bit of another tweet I want to bring up. It kind of contradicts what Mike Clay said as far as a negative goes, just to put everything in perspective. And this is someone tweeting something that Brett Coleman said, another really good college football analyst. He says, when I was on the sidelines at the Penn State game, the level of speed Texans running back Woody Marks just felt different compared to almost everybody else on the field. So maybe his 40 time doesn't relate to his game speed, but I just want to throw this in here as Woody Marks in this game. Brett Coleman thought he was one of the fastest players on the field. So I think that's important. But now, what does Marks bring to this running back room that nobody else has? I think it's something important here. And I think it's first and foremost receiving. We talked about how he had more routes runs, more receiving yards. He's really high on that list in all of those aspects. And you look at his receiving grade versus the Texans running back room. You look on the left here in dark blue is Mixon, light blue is Pierce, and green is Woody Marks. Mixon has about a 60 receiving grade. Damian Pierce has about a 48 receiving grade. Not great. You look at Woody Marks, he has about a 74 receiving grade. Really, really good stuff here from Marks. He's a great receiving running back and can fit into a role there very nicely. Look at his 10-plus yard runs. Joe Mixon, a guy, did really great things last year in the 10-plus yard run category, showing explosiveness, being able to get across the line of scrimmage and make a big play. Joe Mixon had about 34 of those runs. Damian Pierce, not too many there, had about 8 runs. Then you look at Woody Marks, he had closer to 37 of those 10-plus yard runs. And finally, touchdowns. Can he convert? Can he get the job done with the size and everything in tow in that aspect? Joe Mixon did really well, but 14 touchdowns. Damian Pierce, about 2 touchdowns. Not so great there. But Woody Marks, great. 9 touchdowns there. I think he brings a lot to the table in a couple different aspects. So overall, I think what we're hearing is Woody Marks is a running back that was drafted to accentuate this existing Texans running back room. He does a lot of things really well that the other running backs in this room don't do, where they might be better at him in some aspects. So I think that's the key here. And that's why Mike Clay says when this guy comes in, he's going to be a contributor early, because this is a guy you can put in on receiving downs. This is a guy, it could be a third down running back, as far as get him out into the flat, throw him the ball. He's going to be able to catch it and make a big play when the ball is in his hands. He's also fast enough to break those 10-plus yard runs. Brett Coleman says this guy's speed different than everybody else on the field. So overall, I think Woody Marks is a guy that this Texans coaching staff has brought in and is liking very early from what he adds. Is he going to take over and be the lead running back in this room right away? No, I don't think so. But I think he's going to add really good dimension to the running back room and be a guy that can put on the field in a lot of different situations that brings versatility to the position. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Texans fans, in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on this running back room? Do you now think you've gotten everything you need with the combination of Pierce, Mixon, possibly Woody Marks in here now as well? Do you think it's complete? Do you like this running back by committee approach? Or do you wish the Texans would go more to approach like some other teams around the league, like the Ravens, the Eagles, having just one guy, one running back that's doing everything? Let us know what your thoughts are on this strategy in Houston in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on all of this news about Woody Marks here?
So I think you hit on a lot of really important things. And what happens anytime you add players and when you add a player to the fold, right, you're always trying to get better in some areas and not get worse in others. So for example, if you're trying to be, want to add a receiving running back, you want to make sure you don't throw in a guy who then really sucks at pass blocking or is a fumble prom or whatever, something like that, right? And this is a real problem. It sounds obvious what I just said, but a lot of teams will add a player and when you add him for his strengths, but you also get his weaknesses too. So let's pick on Dalton Schultz for a second, the starting tight end for the Houston Texans. He was brought in because he was a great receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, was a receiving threat, but he has been an absolute debacle at times as a blocker in key situations. Not picking on Dalton Schultz here, I'm just using as an example. He's a really nice receiver. He's got to improve some things as a blocker, but that's an example. If you get a player, when you add him in, you get his strengths and his weaknesses as well. You have to account for that. But here's the beauty about Woody Marks. His weaknesses are perfectly aligned with what the Houston Texans need from him, right? You look at his top end speed, they don't really care about that. They're looking for a burst. They're looking for explosions because they got big player makers already at the receiver position. They're absolutely stacked there, and they added 2 more in the NFL draft, right? So it's not like they're looking for home run hitters. They already have that on that offense. And CJ Stroud's unreal talent can turn some of these, average home run plays into massive plays. So they're not looking for the guy that has that sprinter speed. They're looking for that burst. They're looking for that explosiveness. So his weaknesses actually align with what the Texans need, which is really important. And he's also not taking away anything either. Mixon, their starting running back, of course, after a few fumble struggles very early in his career, has been one of the most, maybe the most reliable running back in the NFL in terms of not fumbling. You bring in a guy like Woody Marks. This is a guy who had 1 fumble in 608 touches in the collegiate ranks. So it's not like you're adding a fumbling problem either. So Woody Marks is going to come in and he's not going to detract anything. He's only going to add value as a guy to be a complementary piece. I love the receiving element out of the backfield because if you look at this receiving room, just strictly the wide receivers, phenomenal at the intermediate to deep game. I mean, they're absolutely unreal. CJ Stroud, of course, is a big part of that because he's stupendous, but they haven't had that consistent receiving threat. Now, look, Mixon can be reliable in terms of the screen game and things like that, and he's perfectly fine, but they kind of need a guy to kind of, win those maybe 3rd and 5 matchups leaking out of the backfield. A guy who can, when he's one-on-one on a linebacker, it's a total mismatch. It can be a big play kind of opportunity for the Houston Texans. And Marks is a guy who can be that. His quickness, his talents perfectly align with that as well. So this is one of the better, more under the radar moves that any team made, especially late in the draft. Obviously, this Texans offense is already so stacked. A lot of people get this move lost in the shuffle, but the reality is this is going to really complement things. And if you look at issues on the offensive line, nothing will make the offensive line look a lot better than a running back that can get open very quick, very early, and can turn a 4 yard kind of, angle route, old school Texas route, a little whip route, maybe something like that, and make a big play. Quarterback hooked onto the ball for about 5 milliseconds to make that kind of throw. That was sort of the Tom Brady magic so much in his career when they had those great receiving running backs, right? That offensive line would look great, whether in New England or Tampa, because he would get rid of the ball so quickly to those great receivers out of the backfield, and they'd get 6, 7, 8, 9 yards a pop, sometimes more. And offensive line would have to block for about a blink of an eye, and they look great doing it, right? And I think adding that element to this Texans offense will help Stroud, also help this O line as they obviously look to resolve that problem. And of course, it was a big problem for the Houston Texans. So I can see exactly why everyone is so high on Woody Marks. I can see why the coaching staff specifically. I love that the running backs coach already has a great connection with him. That's really important because the running back room outside the quarterback room is honestly one of the more smaller position coaches opportunities, right? You only have like a handful of running backs. You've got a bunch of offensive linemen, a bunch of D linemen, a bunch of wide receivers, DBs, all that. So it's usually a big group. So when you're in these small rooms, you need these rookies to have good relationships with their position coaches. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. There's a lot of one-on-one, very close interaction. So the fact that the Texans running back coach is already working very well with Marks is, again, another really good sign. So no matter how you look at it, fit, right? Relationships with the coaching staff, aligning with what the Texans are trying to do, not detracting from what the Texans already do. It's no matter where you go, Woody Marks is going to be an absolutely awesome addition to a Texans team. And to be totally honest, the Texans are in win now mode. Now is the time to go out and get it done. CJ Stroud is the next guy to get a massive QB deal. We saw Brock Purdy get one, over the past couple of days. Stroud, my opinion, I'm sure a lot of people agree, is a lot better than Brock Purdy. So I'm expecting Stroud to get a big number, at least compared to Brock Purdy. He may even set a whole new number at the quarterback market. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. That means the Texans need to take advantage of these windows. They're going to need some of these new playmakers to step up. And Woody Marks is a guy, if you listen to these reports, read between the lines, and look at the data, can immediately and will immediately come in and give a big spark to this offense.